Say good morning. My name is Adele Imrie, and I'm the chair of the Toronto Community Housing Board of Directors. Today's meeting is a hybrid meeting, which is taking place in Committee Room 1 at City Hall and virtually using our WebEx platform. We are also live streaming today's meeting on YouTube. I'd like to begin with land acknowledgement, that the land we are all on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We also acknowledge all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. We pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. I'd like to begin my comments with a couple of changes here at TCHC. And considering this is our first meeting of 2026, I just wanted to note that Mar, our GC and corporate secretary, retired at the end of January. We did pay tribute to him at our December meeting. And we're currently recruiting, we've recruited to fill the general counsel role. And right now, Dean Horner is acting general counsel, and Kaylee Wilson is acting as our corporate secretary, and we are actively recruiting for a separate corporate secretary role, so that the roles will be split. I'm just getting used to turning to my right when I need help instead of to my left, because Dara used to always sit on that side, but I will get it. My second point is I wanted to say happy Black History Month. This is a time to celebrate the history and culture of so many Torontonians. And Toronto Community Housing, we have a firm commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, ensuring that all residents and staff feel welcome and celebrated for who they are, making it an important time for us, February. This marks the 30th anniversary of Canada officially recognizing February as Black History Month. The theme for 2026 is honoring Black brilliance across generations, from nation builders to tomorrow's visionaries. It pays tribute to 3 decades of Black History Month in Canada, reflecting on how Black communities have shaped Canada's past, present, and future. Last week, I was fortunate to attend TCHC's Black Staff Caucus's annual event. This year's theme was Black Resistance. It was a very well organized, educational, inspiring, and entertaining. And it featured a demonstration of capoeira, a Black slave martial art that was disguised as a dance so that slave owners would not know what the slaves were practicing. It was an incredibly graceful and powerful presentation, and thanks to one staff volunteer, left feet. It's quite hilarious. And the staff member anonymous, but I'm sure that they're never going to live that down. The music was accompanied with help from Sean on percussion, he's a master, and Dara's very focused performance on the drums. There was also a panel of Black leaders and business owners discussing how they empower the people around them through advocacy, education, and engagement, elevating and enabling the brilliance that makes for healthy, thriving communities in Toronto. Community Service Awards were announced at the event, and I would like to congratulate the 5 winners. Nobel Ibrahim, who's a program coordinator, Stacey Golding, who's Community Service Coordinator, Chris Walker, who's a program manager, Janelle Estwick, who is the EA to the COO, and Michaela Holmes, who is the Tenant Service Administrator at Seniors Housing. On behalf of the board, I'd like to offer sincere thanks for each of these individuals who go above and beyond to serve our tenants, and it's very, very important to all of us. I would also like to thank Zainab Goodwin and Kwesi Johnson, who co-chair the Black Staff Caucus, and their committee volunteers for organizing such an inspiring event, as well as the performers and speakers that brought the event to life. The board is to the Black Staff Caucus, the Center for Advanced Interests of People, and the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion team at TCHC for all the work that they do to help celebrate Black History Month and what they contribute all year round. We should be celebrating all year round. Thank you again to everyone who's attending today's meeting, and I am now going to move on to the agenda. So I will ask the board if there are any additions or deletions to today's agenda as presented. Hearing none, I'll ask if there are any conflict of interest as relates to the agenda items today. Hearing none, I will ask if there are items that members would like to hold. We are holding item number 5, 7B, 7C, and 8A for deputations. Are there any other items? Benita?
8B and 8C, please.
8B and 8C. Nick? Sorry, is that it, Benita? Yeah, thanks. 8C, perfect. Does anyone else have any other items? Hi, would you like to come to the mic? Welcome. Pardon? Yeah. Pardon? Oh, okay. Sorry, could I ask the other woman to introduce herself?
Hello, my name is Carlene Nation.
Okay.
I'm here to support EPEC and be given an opportunity to speak, if possible, to the issues that she's going to raise today.
Okay. You are supposed to register to make a deputation, but in this case, I will allow you your 5 minutes after IPEC has made her deputation.
I thank you kindly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Press it. Hello. Thank you. Good morning, Chair Emery and members of the board. Thank you for the invitation to speak today. My name is Ipek Kabatis, and I'm a 13-year resident of 150 Dan Leckie Way. I'm here on item 5 today because the infrastructure failure, namely the elevators at 150 Dan Leckie Way, remains a 7-year unresolved action item, which has created capital asset negligence. Our building is in a community crisis. My son, chair user, has been the face of this crisis since when he missed us due to broken, overcrowded elevators and, quote, suboptimal design for the chronic service interruptions. In July 2025, after our in writing by memo that modernization will not solve the fundamental capacity issues. Presenting a public petition signed last night, 1 hour alone by 2 residents who are done with patch repairs. TCHC's own July 2025 memo admits a fundamental capacity failure cannot fix. As of yesterday, by the elevators on each floor, TCHC admits was out of service for nearly a month since January 20th under TSSA direction, and elevator number 2 is being pulled out of service today, while TCHC calls this simulation mode. For 426 households, it is a state of emergency. This notice proves that despite 7 years of promises, TCHC cannot provide a reliable path of travel for my wheelchair user son and all other residents. This is why we're here today with our petition and under the Residential Tenancies Act, TCHC has a non-delegible legal duty to maintain the building in a good state of repair. TCHC is in ongoing breach of its Section 20 statutory duty at 150 Downlecky. Repairs are no longer sufficient. Advanced infrastructure modernization is a legal requirement. Deferring elevator modernization for 7 years despite admitted design flaws constitutes capital asset negligence that the board must resolve in this budget. Acted in good faith. Repairs have been patient. We have been today. We are putting the board on notice. If the capital budget is not amended to fund advanced infrastructure modernization, this community is prepared to file a Mass T6 application at the Landlord and Tenant Board and a group human rights application at the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario for a 100% rent abatement for failure of duty to accommodate and the total loss of reasonable enjoyment of hours. Personally speaking, this infrastructure has a user who has been the face of this crisis since the 2019 CTV news reports, a systemic constructive eviction.
These elevators that, to my mind, are damaged, and they're dropping right now. They would drop 5 floors or 10 floors. We can't have that anymore. It's time for change. It's a new year, new budget. Let's see, we get to improve the lives of all our tenants at the Dan Leckie complex. I thank you so kindly for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you so much. Good to see you, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for either of the deputants? Brian? I think you're on mute, Brian. You're still on mute.
Sorry
Brian.
about that. Yeah. No, it may not be to the deputants. Thank them for their donation. Maybe for staff, in 2025, the number of days that elevators were out of service, whether that information is easily available.
We do not have the days out. I took a look at thank you for bringing your deputation. I hope I get a chance to sort of in proceedings and speak to it. We just looked at the number of work orders over the weekend. We weren't able to, but we can come back with the number of days it's been gone out. The elevators were out of service. It's significant.
Can I?
Debbie?
Just a clarification, what percentage of tenants in the building have a disability or are seniors with walkers? I know it's an estimation, but I just missed that number.
I researched the exact number, and according to what I came up with, it was documented as 100 accessible units, so I'm not sure how that is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mary?
Yeah, thank you very much for your deputations. I guess my concern is, obviously you're blaming, sounds awful, fairly new longer, but I'm fairly new here. And I'm just wondering what attempts have been made in the past to get this dealt with. It's the first I'm hearing about it, okay? And it sounds awful. And so I just like to know what steps you've tried in the past. You know, I'm sure there have been many, but give me the highlights. Okay.
So the most recent attempts was in July 25. We had a town hall organized by Councillor Asma Malik. And prior to that, we've had countless meetings. Again, back in 2019, when my son did appear on the CTV news, that did trigger another big meeting, which included TCHC executives, Schindler executives, even the MPP's, Chris Glover residents. Basically, the results of all the meetings are pretty much the same. You know, patchwork. We're gonna review that. We're, you know, a lot of promises. The situation is just worsening. Like, it's not even, it's gone from bad to extremely worse. And yesterday, when I did speak to a few of the tenants who were signing the petition, people were reporting to me, like, it was heartbreaking because they were telling me their parents, PSWs, arrive at the building and then can't get upstairs, so they can't, you know, get their support that they need. I had another a neighbor who has low vision and mentioned, like, the elevator, what floors it was, they recently, like, when they were doing some sort of updates, turned that off. So he's
cleaning staff. So a lot of what I'll comment on is outside of the context of the elevators. We've certainly looked at some of the safety challenges and installing cameras to address some of the safety concerns that were raised. We've also implemented a pilot program to do an SMS communication system to let tenants know when the elevators were down, because we talked about whether there was an opportunity to do that. But we also continue to work with our tenant rep, Carleen Nation, who's here today, and other tenants to try to identify to support the community. We agree with sentiments around the communities around the elevators, and so the local building team does what they can to put up the appropriate notices and connect tenants to the supports that they need, but it indeed has been an ongoing challenge. So we will continue to have monthly check-ins with the tenants and those involved to support wherever we can.
Thanks so much. Firstly, just want to thank you both for coming, Carly, EPAC. I think the way you talked about good faith and the spirit that you're here today and the way you're talking about the problem too is much appreciated. And I think the speed by which your petition got filled speaks to the urgency here. And in my experience of building new buildings and fixing older buildings, no matter what, the building is only as good as its elevator. It really comes down to that. So I appreciate the frustration here. And, you know, Sean mentioned this is I want the Dan Leckie community to know we are focused on them. We report on not just elevators, but the mechanical system, which we invested in last year significantly and expanded to make sure this summer we don't have the same cooling issues that the building has had. And we report to the executive leadership team, to Sean and Deputy Mayor on regular intervals about this building. So we're investing in this building and we have our eyes on it and we're focused on the community. So I want you to know that. The elevators have been persistently operationally frustrating, problematic, and this was exacerbated last year with the flood that took a year to replace car after car, right, to get through that. And just when we think we're through that, another issue happens into the new year that's caused, you know, one to be down and then two. We do stock parts. These are the types of things we've tried to do. We stock about some 30 parts on site to make sure that we have them, that downtimes, and that we're ready to repair. We've worked with Schindler, we've worked with the vendor to have dedicated staff to this and response times, and they've helped us with the automated to some 260 who are signed up. last week, we are bringing in a specialist on elevating to give us some options, including wholesale replacement. And I want you to know that in terms of our capital budget and in terms of what lengths we are willing to go to repair this, there is no limit. We recognize this as an issue. We recognize it as underserved, and we are focused on it. And just as you've come to us, we are ready to do whatever it takes to remedy that situation. So we are totally agree with you. It's not an acceptable level of service, and a building is only as good as your access to it. So I appreciate you coming down and taking us through that personally and taking time. So, yeah.
And I would just add one last item. The final thing I would just mention is we're also working hand in hand with the regulator, TCHC. So they've been on site with us for a number of weeks, dealing with inspection of these elevators and trying to understand what could be causing some of the safety concerns around their use. So it also contributes to some of the downtime of the elevators, but it's an important step that we take as well. So just in conclusion from staff, I'll simply say we agree with the concerns that are being raised. It's an extraordinarily high priority for us, and we understand that it will come with a cost. And we haven't determined exactly what that cost will be yet, but we'll be back with further discussion on exactly how we're going to solve that problem.
Mary?
What's the timeline on that? I think that I'm hearing that CTV was around in 2019, that's 6 years ago. And it seems like the discussions are ongoing, and I appreciate it. You know, it's a real cost and money issues, but these are people's homes. And 7 years down the road, I think probably, and I don't know that much about elevators, but it seems to me it's about time to say, hey, you know, everything we've done hasn't worked. We've got to replace it. We've got to do something. So what's our timeline? Because they're having the tenants, not just the deputants here, but all of the tenants are having to deal with that every day.
Yeah, so to the chair, certainly agree. It's hard for me to speak to what occurred between 2019 and 2024. However, I don't believe that it was sufficient. I think that it wasn't addressed appropriately. I can tell you that in the past sort of 18 months, it's become a significantly higher priority. I think we were hopeful that there could be ways to address it through what Noah spoke about stocking parts on site, having tighter windows for our technicians to attend, better testing of the car. So there were a number of things that we were trying to accomplish in hopes that we could address this through simpler solutions. I think we have likely come to the solution at this point that those have been unsuccessful. So now, as Noah mentioned, we've got a consultant on site to look at what are the larger scale solutions that we could put into place. So Noah, can you speak to how long that process will take with the consultant?
Sure, thank you, and through the chair. I mean, our priority is to get through the latest glitch here and latest downtime and get those elevators back on, and that we require TCHC sign off, and that's why one elevator is going down so they can view it, sign off on the recent issues and get them both going. The consultant, we have a call this afternoon. We will get them on site. I imagine it will take a couple of weeks for them to review that and come back with options, and that's something we'll happy to bring forward here as an update, but I'm waiting till board if there's actionable items to take forward. So I can't speak specifically to what they might take. If it's a wholesale replacement, Carly put it well, like it's going to take a year, car by car, to do that, and we're gonna deploy that in the same way we've done the elevator modernization pieces that we've done, in a way that tries to limit downtime and disruption as best we can. But a wholesale replacement is a long endeavor. We basically have done that over the last year following the flood. So it is about a year, not including when you would order when you would go through the process of selecting an order. That's the complete wholesale replacement option. So just to give you an idea. But we'll be at a decision place, hopefully within a month.
So within a month, the consultant will have completed their review. Is that what you're saying?
We hope to have some decisions we hope to have some decisions in front of us within 4 weeks. Yes, it's urgent, right? Like
I know it's urgent. That's why I'm asking. Vanita?
Through the chair, just a quick question to add on to that, and not to, and thank you to the deputants, not to minimize the concerns you brought forward are very serious to management and the board. But has FM done a review of our portfolio to confirm if the same vintage of elevator exists, year, make, model, and any other concerns at a broader end?
It's a great question. It is a unique elevator in our portfolio. It is the one of its typology with the one vendor, right? So it's the one sort of gearless, if you're an elevator person, right, that we have with high-speed gearless that we have with a particular vendor. And we do not have the breadth of control and sort of door monitoring issues that we have on this set of elevators that anywhere really at this scale anywhere else in the portfolio.
What are the vendor's obligations here? Like, this is a Schindler elevator?
Yes.
Like, is it defective? What is the issue? Was it improperly installed in a building that has 24/7?
Point of order.
Board has a point of order.
Yeah, I don't think we should be talking about vendor liability in public session.
Okay.
One thing I would like us to have addressed, and I think they're attempting to address that, is the turnaround time. When the elevator is down, it's 4 hours to get Schindler on site in some instances. I was trapped in the elevator on 2 occasions for 4 hours, so 8 hours. The buttons inside some of the elevators for the phones are not working. There's supposed to be a button that you push to connect you. In some instances, people are saying that button is not working. So it's the problems are myriad, and the issues challenging. I think the turnaround time to get Schindler on site to do these repairs, 4 hours, and God help you if it's on certain week holidays, then you don't see them until the next morning. The other issue is when there's a false fire alarm, it shuts down the elevators, and then it takes hours to get a technician to get it back up and running to reset. So we're getting hit from all corners here. So I'm so happy to be able to accompany EPEC. EPEC is here, and we have our another tenant leader here, Humaira Siddiqui. We're all here looking for solutions to this ongoing issue. I've been in the building since 2017. I've organized 13 tenant meetings over the years, and it seems like we're not getting ahead. 5 paces ahead and 500 backwards all the time. So I'm really optimistic, and I thank EPEC Wellington for kickstarting this whole conversation in a more elevated way. I thank you so much. I'd like to invite you to join the next maintenance meeting. If I could get your business card, you'll hear from me later today. Thank you so much.
You have a closing remark?
I just have a quick couple questions. You mentioned the TSSA, and I was wondering, there's a residential elevator outage record portal that's public that you can plug in your postal code to see a record of all the outages. And when we do that, it says there are no results found. Is that indicating that they're not being reported?
I'm not.
So there was that question. Just a quick remark about there's so many contractors in the building now that they're almost congesting the building, which is, not necessarily a bad thing, but when there's only one elevator running, it's stressful. But another thing a tenant shared with me was that, the contractors are speaking amongst themselves and can be heard saying they've never been anywhere as bad as this before. And, it's hard to hear that and to deal with that.
Yes, Brian, I see your hand. I was just waiting for EPEC to finish.
Sorry, I was also wondering when would be a good time to hand over the petitions and the settlement? Would that be later, or do I need to do that now?
You can.
I just don't know the process, so I don't want to be out of order.
Yeah, so Neil will take them.
Okay.
Now, Brian?
Well, none of us would put up with this if we, in any of our own homes, so I feel terrible about this and not realizing. I guess my question is putting forward a motion that staff report back to the next
Yes.
BIFAC meeting with a concrete plan to have the elevators
Yes.
replaced, so that we can move on, because 6 years, I mean, I realize this predates many staff that are sitting around the table, but I mean, it doesn't predate all the tenants that are in that unit, in that building.
Yes.
So I just think we need some very specific timelines to have
Yes.
a report back and move on, so that hopefully this summer, whatever changes need to take place can be started the work, because I mean, elevator replacement or any kind is a long process, as everyone has mentioned. But
Yes.
we definitely need to. So if option to
Yeah.
direct staff report
I
back,
think we're
I'd
still having
appreciate that.
discussion, but I totally agree, Brian, because I think in most cases, board members were not aware of these issues. And so we will continue to oversee what progress is being made. We can do it through BIFAC, and then I would like it to come to the board. And if we do that at each meeting, until we are comfortable that it's being addressed, we will do that. Mary?
Yeah, I want any report to come to tenant services as well.
Yeah, we can,
Okay, because it's a tenant services issue and
yes, we
in
can.
of itself.
We ask that you establish one line of, otherwise because I don't want to have conflicting
So this is FM. So it,
Well, yeah, I don't understand why it can't go to both. I mean, it's, if there's
is there a
anything
problem
that's a
if
tenant.
people report to, if Nadia reports at tenant services?
Yes, it's a
then-
tenant services issue.
Yeah, is it impossible for,
So happy to provide report back on progress. I'd like us to take direction from a single source. So perhaps from board, we can report back on BIFAC and TSC and then take direction at board.
okay?
Very good.
I would only say, I don't want the process, okay, it has to go here, there, and everywhere, to in any way hold up any action, okay? If something has to be directed or whatever, let's let it happen and not let our process hold it up, okay?
Well, I don't think so, because I understand that the budget is, like, there's budget here for this.
So to the chair, we just we're not quite there yet, right? So
Okay.
there's more information that we need in order to bring
Okay.
forward a reasonable solution. And yes, it may have budget implications, or we may be able to accommodate with what we have. We don't know the answer to that just yet.
And-
Sean, do you think you'll have that information by the next BIFAC meeting?
Which is March,
I do believe we will.
end of March. So that follows Noah's timeline to the,
So happy to commit that we will bring back the best available information we have at the point that we come back to BIFAC, to TSC, and to.
and the board will be in at the end of April.
So we were asking for a principal agreement right today. Will we be able to get that?
No, we'd have to.
We'll go in the minutes, right?
Yeah.
We'll minute the action items and
Yeah.
next steps and so on.
Yeah,
So that's written.
You want public confirmation.
Yeah, we want public agreement in writing. Sorry, a principal agreement in writing. Just like we've been doing this for a very long time, and it's all next meeting. Next meeting, we'll review that, and we appreciate it. We're looking for something a little bit more solid here.
yeah.
Okay, Adele, can
Brian?
deputants to come to both those meetings, so that either virtually or in person, so that they can fully hear the plan and whether that would satisfy them and their ability to report back on the ongoing communication between staff and tenants.
Marcel?
Thank you. Okay, so we're having a board meeting in April and
Yes.
a decision should be, or at least an option or an idea of where to go should be within the month. So then that's a month of wait time. So I'm a little confused with that. So we would have to wait till April so the board could direct management to address the issue.
So their management is going to come to BIFAC in March, and I don't know when tenant services is. I think it's also in March, but Marcel has to do some more. So there is some time that is required before these presentations can be made and decisions can be made.
Okay.
So I think it is a very complex issue, and obviously we need information from the consultant. So I don't, oh, sorry, Nick? Okay. You know, other than the timelines that we're committing to, and Brian's suggestion is good if you would like to attend BIFAC, and you'll hear at the update.
Gordon has his hand up.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Gord?
Thanks. I'd like to propose a slightly different way of going about this. I think that it's necessary that, or a way of going about this is to give staff the authority to undertake the necessary steps, X, Y, and Z, including keeping tenants informed, and that they regularly update the board. We don't want to, as the board, take over those operational matters of communicating with individual tenants and making decisions about proceeding with work. Noah said that if something actionable comes up, they'll just do it. So let's not conflate those things, okay?
And I don't think we are. All Noah is going to do.
Well, I was hearing report to all the different committees and invite the tenants to come to board meetings to get their updates. People shouldn't have to come to a board meeting to get an update.
Well, the deputants do.
No, our staff can directly communicate with them and and we can direct our staff to do that.
But
Yes,
I think it's a problem. It's a problem for us to take on those operational functions of communicating with tenants and monitoring or making decisions at each and every step of the repair structure, but rather we should be directing staff to do that. And if they need additional permissions, extra money or something, then to come. But to routinely update the board is fine, but not for making decisions about how to communicate with tenants. I think that's overstepping.
If I could just.
Okay, I think Brian was just inviting them so that they could see that they could see that we were taking this seriously and that we are continuing to monitor the progress that is being made, so that they could just hear the reports that Noah or Nadia make. That was it, not to make any decisions.
Yeah.
I think, I won't speak for Brian because it was his suggestion, but.
Well,
I wasn't suggesting approval or anything. Just obviously the tenants are very frustrated.
Yeah.
And it's not to say there hasn't been communication up to now. Obviously there has been, but the results haven't been satisfactory. And I think the tenants want to know that actually something's going to get done. And all I want to know is for staff to tell us what.
Yeah.
I don't want to approve it. I just
And the
keep
tenants,
us informed.
yes, and the tenants to hear that. And I don't think that there's anything you need from the board right now as it relates to moving forward. Yeah.
Could I just say, I just want to, because I'm the one who said it has to be brought back to tenant service. I want to make it clear. And then I said I don't want process to get in the way. No, I don't see having it brought back to the committees and to tenant services particularly as in any way getting into operations. I want that to happen now, but I just would like to have a report that that's happening. But that's all, simply information.
On an
not
update.
direction. Okay, but
And
an
that's all
update.
I think that's all anyone is asking for is an update. It's not to prevent any work from being done.
So can I just?
John?
So just to the chair, there's nothing in front of us right now that is stopping us from taking any action. So
Yeah.
there's no approvals that are required. As with anything else, we'll certainly bring it forward if there is a need for further approvals, but we have significant discretion with regard to our capital repairs budget. So I actually don't anticipate that there will be significant hurdles that require board direction. Should that arise, of course, we'll bring that back here.
Yeah.
But we are capable and ready to move forward with this as is.
Yes. So it's just for information at, at each of the committees. I think they're very interested to know that progress is being made. We're interested in what the consultant's going to say, and that's it.
And we appreciate
Did
that.
you? I'm looking at you. You look
Well,
like you
we
want to
also
say
have,
something.
we also, and just to give just to make sure the board understands this too, that's for the board's information. We have a framework with the tenants for
Yes.
communication. They don't need to wait to board or this governance. We will be in touch with them as we have been.
Yes, and we're just inviting you to the committees if you would like to hear what reports we receive. And that's,
Yeah, we appreciate that, and we do appreciate the sentiment that it's we're sort of all meetinged out, so to speak, about this issue. And a lot of, I'll be honest, like, this is not my job, so a lot of what you guys are talking about in the intricacies of the meetings and how you're handling it, it's complex and it is going over my head. I really just am here for a result that is different from the past, and I appreciate that it's complicated. I can hear that from your discussions, but we also, we will attend future meetings, but we're not waiting for such updates after today. We are prepared to move forward legally, and that's what we wanted to communicate here as well. And the Ombudsman's office is waiting for a call tomorrow morning. I do have Janet's email here printed out confirming that if we aren't able to get it resolved, to contact them tomorrow morning to facilitate as well.
okay. I appreciate that, and we will continue our discussion, and if there's any further communication, we will make sure that you're aware.
Thank you.
I thank you so much for giving us the time today to speak to you all, and thank you so much for taking this as seriously as you all are, because it's very damaging to our quality of life in our home that we can't get to our homes every day. Thank you so much.
Okay. We certainly appreciate your time, and we certainly appreciate you bringing this to the attention of the board. Most of us were not aware of the issues that you've been experiencing for several years. And,
Thank you.
And we will continue to get updates.
Thank you.
That's what I can
Thank you so much.
promise. So thank you.
Thanks again.
So this was item number 5. So my only comment on item number 5, the actual action list, there's some confusion with the city directives and what ends up on the board's action list and what ends on the city's action list as it is in 7C. I think there's some work to be done here. So I just wanted to communicate that that work will be done, and we'll get an organized list so that the board is aware of what obligations we have. So we'll work with Kaylee on that. So can I have a motion to receive the action item list? Debbie, seconder Vanita, all in favor? Thank you. So we will move on to item 7B. And we have a deputation here. Where's my deputation list? So Catherine.
Yes,
Catherine.
yes, good morning, Madam Chair. It's actually, yeah, so it's 7B. Is that your understanding?
We're on item 7B. It's
Right,
the
okay.
2026 Public Board and Committee Work Plans.
Absolutely. All righty. Okay, good morning, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Members of
Good
this
morning.
board, tenants, staff, visitors, people at City Hall. Good morning. Good day to have a meeting today and not tomorrow. Just saying.
Oh.
Okay, so, as indicated in the report before you at the recent Tenant Services Committee, we discussed their work plan for the year, and I did propose a couple of items for inclusion. And the TSC was committee and members were gracious enough to accept those 2 additional items to their work plan. However, the work plan before you for approval today does not include those 2 items. And I just wanted to clarify, I know during that meeting, Sean had indicated perhaps these items might be, an action item. But for some of our newer members, the action item list was created 7 years ago at my recommendation as a member of this board. At issue was the board and committee requested additional information, and it may not have been captured in the minute taking, or if an official motion wasn't passed, then perhaps it wasn't necessarily an official request, and therefore items would fall off the table. So the purpose of the action item list is to capture any additional items arising, so they would be added and you could monitor that action item list until the items were brought forward and then removed. So you could think of it as your board honey-do list. And it has served the board well, in my opinion, if I do say so myself. So the 2 items I added at the Tenant Services Committee were use of non-residential space policy, and the second item was solicitation in Toronto Community Housing buildings. So I would ask the board to consider not approving this work plan unless we have in fact added those 2 items as approved at the Tenant Services Committee. Thank you kindly.
Sorry, Catherine, could you tell me what the second item was?
Solicitation in Toronto Community Housing buildings on our properties.
Okay. So Mary, just a point, when it comes to the tenant services, I appreciate the tenant service committee happened after the materials went out for the board. But what I would have appreciated was that either you held those materials for the 2 days and sent them out late, and we often get late information materials, or you sent us an update to say that, what the committee discussed and what the committee is recommending to the board as far as, what they approved. So that would have been helpful. And I don't know how we amend the materials that are here. I'll let Mary speak to the other items that are in the TSC chair's report. But going in the future, ideally, we have all our committees before board materials, go out. But if that's not the case, then I would appreciate either, if it's reasonable, that they be held, or that we get an update so that we're aware of issues like this, where there's been discussion. And I'll turn it over to Mary as to what was decided at tenant services.
Fair enough.
To update.
I think the information was received. I think it's fair to say there wasn't anything decided, but it was going to be for the future. So fair enough. I'm still also learning, but I see no reason why that should have been included in the work plan. Yeah.
So did you approve the amendments to the work plan?
We didn't, I guess. Yeah, no, we haven't, right? Well, we did at the committee, though. We sent it forward. Sorry, Kaylee.
Sorry,
if you can
through the
just-
chair. So we did approve the amended work plans, but we also noted that the solicitation and TCHC buildings, we didn't have a report back date on that. So that would be added at a later date, once we knew when we would be in a position to report back on that. And we did, we put a Q3, Q4.
Yeah,
The date is still to be determined as well in terms of the report back on the non-residential use of space policy.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily showing now, but it was intended that it would be down the road. So my bad if
Okay,
I
so
didn't catch that.
Q3, you're amending to include the use of non-residential space policy?
Yes.
And
Solicitation.
you're noting the solicitation will be added.
Yeah.
Once there's further discussion in terms of when the timing will take place, and we will make sure that that gets added and it will be captured on the work plan for
Okay,
going forward.
so
Yeah.
we'll approve it as amended with these two, okay?
That's fine, yes, and I apologize to Catherine because, yeah, definitely there was a discussion, so.
Yes, but the board didn't.
Yeah, I understand that, but
Didn't get
as I
updated
said,
as
at
to-
that point, nothing was decided, it was to come back in the future, but now I'm understanding that regardless of that, it should still be in for next presented. Fair enough.
Okay. Are there any other questions as it relates to the tenant service work plan? My only question is the annual strat plan report. I'm presuming that that's the annual implementation plan for 2027? Okay. So the implementation plan, the annual implementation plan needs to align with the budget. And the workshop for BIFAC is in November. So we're going to have to back that up to October because the two have to be aligned. When you're doing the budget and making requests to move forward with your strat plan, it has to be an implementation plan that's approved by the budget or by the board. So I would ask that that be amended. So it's I don't know what the date is. I just know it's an October date. Okay, so we've got amendments to the tenant services work plan and amendments to the board work plan. So can I have a motion to approve the work plans as amended? Vanita and Mary seconder. All in favor? Thank you. And we have a deputation on item 7B, and that's Catherine.
We just did that.
Oh, 7C, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so I believe there may have been an item missed. The chair referenced something to do with this item in terms of city council action items and where they belong. But I believe there may have been an item missed that should have been included on this list. And I guess we could think of this as the city's, honey-do list. The decision was adopted at the December 16 council meeting, and it pertains to the city's heat relief strategy. There were many updates at the city on previous reports, requirements of landlords, additional actions the city will take to mitigate the risk of extreme heat on vulnerable populations and, the healthcare system. So the specific amendment I want to share with you was this. City Council adopted the following amendments to Chapter 497 that will come into focus effective June 1, 2026. A, include the requirement that the owner and operator of an apartment building, as defined by Toronto Municipal Code Chapter 354, apartment buildings, with an existing indoor amenity space, must maintain a temperature of not more than 26 degrees Celsius from June 1st to September 30th of each year in at least one amenity space if cooling is not provided in all dwelling units. From the report received at TSC, we know how many buildings do not have AC. So unless the owner or operator can establish that the only way to comply with this requirement is to undertake construction or demolition within the meaning of the Building Code Act. So that is the language from the city. So as per that amendment to the municipal code and the report to the Tenant Services Committee, we have 259 buildings which currently do not have air conditioning, nor do the units have air conditioning themselves. So management confirmed that all of these 259 buildings have an amenity space. That's the good news. And we know that, many of these rooms were not opened last year. So management will need to, audit their amenity spaces. This would be my recommendation. Determine which ones have AC. Those that do not, purchase appropriate model for air conditioner of each of the designated amenity spaces in advance of the June 1st deadline, and then post daily hours of operation. There will, of course, be a financial impact resulting from this city's direction. So, I will leave it to the board to determine if they would like to add this item to their list and be kept apprised of the implementation across the portfolio in advance of the cooling system. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Catherine.
Adele, if I may, Catherine, it's Debbie. Is this related to another deputation that you talked about having common spaces remaining open during the summertime so that folks are able to access it without needing staff to let them in? Is this all connected to that?
So thank you for that excellent question. It does, but at the moment, the mayor has ordered Toronto Community Housing to open its community spaces for this purpose. And this is just sort of revalidating. Now it's open. Now it's all landlords, not just specific agencies or corporations, to undertake to do that. We will be having, as it stands, our community rooms are ordered open by the mayor from June 1st to September 30th. So Toronto Community Housing cannot lock tenants out because that's now a requirement of the city. And in addition to that, as an item added to the work plan, was the request to sit down with our COO and discuss, what are the barriers preventing us to open our community rooms to our tenants since they were built for that purpose. So that's going to happen down the road, but for sure, we're going to get them open for the summer months. So we thank the city and Toronto Housing for that.
I think Brian had his hand up. I don't see the squares anymore. But...
Thank you.
Oh, yep. Okay, there.
Thanks, Catherine. I guess mine is not only with regard to that, but other directives. I guess I'm just wondering, obviously these directives has a financial impact on the organization. And I just wondered on a going forward basis, whether Sean or the staff can report what the financial impact may be to implement directives that we're required to follow for the city, because obviously BIFAC should be aware of those increased costs.
Yeah, so through the chair, happy to do that. It's an issue that we're aware of and that we're working on a plan to address it right now for this summer. So happy to bring back more information about what the financial implications are. And we're trying to get ahead of the broader question as well about cooling in general and what the options are facing Toronto Housing and the costs associated with that as well. So we'll bring both back to the board.
Thank you.
Could I just ask about the process to get these directives on the list?
Through the chair. So my understanding is this instance, City Council did not provide any direction to the board. And what we include currently is directions to the board. So staff are aware, are taking action on it, but it was not a specific direction to the board.
It was a direction to TCHC or just landlords and
just in general?
Just landlords in general.
In general. Yeah. Now, we do have a new council update report that we are providing for information to board members, and we just finalized the one from the last board meeting. That would include items of interest, and so that's where we flag items that actually don't result in a specific direction to the board. So we are now bringing those forward for the board's information so that they do have a line of sight, and the differentiation is that there hasn't been a specific direction.
And sorry, this other list, where is that list? Is it?
So it's not a list, it's on action. It's a council summary following each council meeting that we prepare like a digest summary of items of interest that council considered that would be of interest to the board.
And how are you distributing that to us?
That is being distributed through Sean's office to the board following board meetings. So the team takes a week to 2 weeks to summarize, and then we get that out to the board. So you will have one coming imminently from the most recent board council meeting.
So they're coming one at a time.
Correct. Like, it's
I think-
a summary
I think
from the
for-
council
They're
meeting.
coming after council meeting if there's
After the
anything of
council-
interest.
After council meeting, okay, but I think there should be, rather than just an email, there should be some way that we can keep track of this as part of our materials, because it's.
Sure, we just
we
keep it.
forget stuff
Yeah,
from
no, no.
one.
I guess we wanted to keep it separate from the board materials, and because they don't align with the council date, so we want to send it to you as close as possible to when the council meeting has concluded, but certainly happy to talk about a different distribution.
Okay.
Format.
Yeah, it's
for
just
that.
emails
Sure.
come and, if you don't get a chance to look at it, and then it's lost. And so we don't have any mechanism from one meeting to the other to keep track
Happy
of
to
them.
take
So
that
I
offline.
think we
Yes.
should consider that. So I'm presuming that the item that Catherine is speaking to is on this communication.
Correct.
Okay, and so Catherine, we will consider, oh, sorry, Brian, do you have your hand up again? No. You're,
Sorry, I just wonder whether the spreadsheet of tracking the directives and the costs related to those, so that we can follow that on a regular basis, and when we've done them.
yes, and that's what we're going to take offline and create. So Catherine, it is being communicated to us, and we will establish a format so that the board is aware and can keep track of those on a regular basis.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So can I have a motion to approve the listing of city council directions requiring board attention? Debbie, Vanita, seconder, all in favor? Thank you. We will move on to item 8A, and we have two deputants on the report of the Office of the Commissioner of the Housing Equities 2025 Work Plan. You're the first deputant.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I promise this is my last deputation for the meeting. Okay, so.
According to my list, it is.
Right? And no surprises here, no walk-ons. When I had the privilege of joining this board in 2008, I was actually shocked at the number of tenants that were in arrears. And there were literally thousands of tenants in various stages of the arrears collections process, heading down that path towards the landlord and tenant board and eventually eviction. I understood, the arrears collections process. Landlord's role is to collect rent. We need that to keep the doors open. But I also understood at the same time the vulnerability of the tenants who live in Toronto community housing and their struggles to, pay rent. And so it was a bit of a struggle coming in as a director, and I had to sort of question how I would balance collecting the rent versus evicting these vulnerable individuals. So in 2010, Toronto Community Housing hired the Honorable Patrick Lesage following the eviction of Al Gosling, an 80-year-old senior who was evicted, who subsequently died after picking up a virus in a shelter. The Honorable Patrick Lesage undertook an extensive review looking at all of our internal procedures and policies and that we used in terms of eviction prevention and how we responded to tenants. He interviewed hundreds of employees, literally probably hundreds of tenants, external stakeholders. He also looked at various forms of legislation, and he made many recommendations. One of them was the creation of this office, the notion of an Office of Housing Equity, whose purpose was to review tenant files for seniors and vulnerable tenants facing loss of subsidy or eviction due to arrears. And so he also wanted to see that we were in compliance with legislation as well as our own procedures and policies, and that there was procedural fairness prior to any files being sent to the landlord and tenant board for eviction. In 2013, the CEO created an external advisory committee chaired by two directors, and I had the privilege of being one of them. And I do believe that I was probably well suited for that role. It included a variety of stakeholders with expertise in human rights, legal clinics, mental health sector, a tenant who was a senior, as well as the tenant with expertise in accessibility needs, City of Toronto staff, shelter support and housing admin, and Toronto Community Housing staff for support. So together we hammered out a job description for the creation of this office, a budget, proposed staffing. We created a small executive search team, and we interviewed individuals for the position. And in 2013, Toronto Community Housing hired a first commissioner of housing equity. We also created the terms of reference, confirming the mandate for this office and the operating processes of OACH, whose offices opened in April 2014. So we've come a long way, suffice to say. It was up to the Commissioner of Housing Equity to establish their own policies and procedures and staffing needs, which fortunately for us, included the current acting Commissioner of Housing Equity. So solid working relationships have been established, I believe, between Toronto Community Housing and Toronto Seniors Housing, and this has led to streamlining the once complex arrears process, reducing dependence on OACH for oversight in arrears files, and being able to tailor the services to the needs of the individual seniors and vulnerable tenants that we serve. So we have learned of many new partnerships and opportunities to access much needed resources that will further promote and help our tenants to remain successfully housed as a result of OACH. The OACH team continues to work with Toronto Community Housing, Toronto Seniors Housing, to address systemic issues as they arise, tweaking that arrears collections process and delivering on goals that this board sets for them each year. So above all, it keeps tenants housed, it stabilizes tenants while ensuring that evictions are a last resort. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Are there any questions as it relates to item 8A from members? Well, I'm sorry.
You forget all the time. I'll forgive you. You ready? Okay. Okay. Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
And I forgive you. Don't worry.
Sorry.
Happens. Okay. Good morning, Chair and members of the board. First of all, thanks to Kathy for that wonderful overview of the Al Gosling inquiry and its findings and the recommendations. I think it's a good context to what I'm going to say. So my name is Waleed Kogali Ali, and I'm the co-chair of the Regent Park Neighborhood Association. I'm here today to call for one clear and immediate action. Implement an immediate moratorium on evictions from social housing, effective without delay, and maintain it until at least the fall of 2026, or until a full independent analysis is completed to understand the systemic failures driving the skyrocketing eviction rates. Last week on Thursday, February 12th, I had the opportunity to depute before the Toronto Community Housing Tenant Services Committee. At that meeting, I was actually disappointed. Rather than acknowledging the gravity of the findings presented in our analysis, our CEO attempted to cast doubt on the numbers, emphasizing that the data came from the Ontario government might not be accurate. Let me be clear. It does not matter whether the data originates from Tribunals Ontario or internal reporting systems. What matters is that eviction outcomes have increased dramatically. In 2023, 624 eviction orders were recorded at the tribunal level, while TCHC publicly reported 162. That is a difference of 462 households. Households, my friends, not individuals. 285% higher than what was publicly reported. In 2025, from January through October alone, the gap was 150 households, not individuals, families, 150 families. Instead of taking full responsibility for this crisis in social housing, attempts were made to downplay the scale of evictions. Even more disturbing was hearing from a tenant director appeared to minimize the crisis. Comments that felt profoundly out of touch with the lived experience of the most vulnerable tenants. Because on the ground, this is not a theory, it's not theoretical. Seniors who have been evicted are reaching out to community leaders for help. They're asking for referrals to shelters. They're asking where they can sleep. They're asking how they can survive. Evictions from social housing is not an administrative outcome. It's a destabilizing event that can lead directly to homelessness and death. And we have been here before. In May 2010, about 16 years ago, the report on the eviction of Al Goslin was released following a tragic death that exposed systemic failures in eviction prevention within TCHC. That report made clear eviction must be a last resort, prevention must be prioritized, governance must ensure accountability. Yet, here we are, nearly 16 years later, facing skyrocketing eviction outcomes and declining use of mediation. I'll give one credit. If you look at the screen, in 2025, we had 100 eviction-related cases mediated. That was a step in the right direction. And I want to thank the TCHC staff that made that possible. Yet, there's no publicly available race disaggregated eviction data. And I know it's Black History Month, and we know that 42% of TCHC tenants identify as Black. There's been no meaningful public action by the Center for Advancing the Interests of Black People to address the eviction crisis affecting vulnerable tenants. And perhaps most troubling at all, the Black Tenant Participatory Committee has not met since its formation. I know that. I was appointed to that committee on April 16th, 2024. Since that date, nearly 2 years ago, it has not convened. That's really shameful. That is almost 2 years of inaction. When Black tenants are not meaningfully involved in addressing systemic anti-Black racism in housing policy, especially during a period of escalating evictions, that is not equity. That is an abandonment of governance responsibility. Commitments to address anti-Black racism must be operationalized, not simply referenced. We cannot speak about equity while evictions are rising and participatory structures sit dormant. Board members, you have a duty of care. You have a fiducial responsibility, and you have the authority to act. The conditions today demand precaution. If evictions are skyrocketing, if reporting discrepancies remain unresolved, if mediation usage is necessary, if race disaggregated analysis have not been conducted, if participatory governance structures have not been convened, then evictions must pause. A moratorium is not radical, it is responsible governance in the face of uncertainty and harm. We're calling for a temporary halt until fall 2026 or until independent analysis is completed to understand the systemic drivers behind these trends.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, and we appreciate you coming today. Are there any other questions on item 8A? Debbie?
Wally, did you reference a committee that hasn't met in 2 years? Which, I'm sorry, I missed what you said.
Thank you, Debbie. The committee that did not meet since 2024, April 2024, is known as, it actually has a mandate, it is known as the Black Tenant Advisory Committee, if I'm not mistaken. So it is a committee that's supposed to have Black tenants to help address systemic anti-Black racism in housing policy. And I was appointed to that Black Tenant Participatory Committee, that's the proper title. on April 16th, 2024, and it never met.
Thank you.
Sorry, Brian?
Yeah, no, I was just trying to figure out, because the information I have and the information that was provided here, there seems to be discrepancy between evictions numbers, and I just am trying to figure out why there is that discrepancy. So whether the deputant has, since he's been on top of it, whether he has any ideas why there appears to be.
Yeah.
I think Sean's, can I ask Sean to speak to that?
Sure, I can speak to that next, yeah.
Okay, so to the chair, yeah, happy to discuss the numbers in great detail. So I think it's important to understand that when we look at evictions data, you'll often see things reported in three different ways. So you'll see the filing, the number of filings that are made to the Landlord-Tenant Board, which I believe was one of the numbers that the deputant had up on the chart. Then you'll see the number of ordered evictions coming out of the Landlord-Tenant Board, which I think was one of the other numbers shown there. However, the numbers that we generate and that board members will be more accustomed to seeing will be the evictions that are actually carried out. And so those are considerably lower than either of the first two numbers. And I think there's good reason for that, right? There are all manner of ways that you can resolve a pending eviction before carrying out such eviction. We routinely enter into repayment agreements if it's an arrears-related issue. For example, we actually had more than 2,000 repayment agreements in 2025, and we actually only carried out, I think it was 60-odd evictions related to arrears in 2025. Quite often, eviction notices that come from the Landlord-Tenant Board are what is called voidable. So if there are outstanding amounts to be paid, or if there are behaviors to be resolved, and those are within a period of time, then those orders automatically are voided on behalf of the Landlord-Tenant Board and are no longer enforceable. And then third, just within TCHC ourselves, we also conduct considerable work with tenants throughout an eviction proceeding, and that doesn't end just because an order was issued. And so it will be, I suspect it will always be the case that you will see lower numbers in carried out evictions as compared to the filing numbers or the ordered evictions from the Landlord-Tenant Board.
Thank you, Sean.
Sean, is it possible that when you're reporting out the eviction notice to us, then that we have that? Because I think what that shows is the policy working in terms of interventions, folks having an order, being able to pay arrears 2 days before they move out or have taken advantage of, I think it's a 72 hours or something, so then at least we know. Because I was also very concerned about the discrepancies in numbers that Waleed has been presenting in his very thorough research document and what it is that we were seeing in terms of what we received from you. Sorry, Mayor. Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, certainly happy to provide that back.
Just want to answer my friend. I just put on the screen the data that I received from Tribunals Ontario, so Freedom of Information request back in December, because those were suspicious to me when they were reported by Toronto Community Housing. I've dealt with 29 households facing evictions, and I prevented it. And I want to thank TCHC staff that worked with me to make that happen. I still have 12 ongoing cases. Now, according to the tribunal's own data, the good news is, and I like to always start with good news. I'm not a pessimist, I'm an optimist. There was 100 applications in 2025 that were dealt with through mediation. That's a good upward trend. We want to see more of that. What is problematic, my friends, is we had 674 applications to evict, 25 were withdrawn, 8 were denied. So there were 8 cases where the tribunal said, you're not evicting these TCHC tenants, which is good. Kudos for the family that were able to get representation and win. And there were 100 that were mediated. How you look at it, whether it's the tribunal's numbers or TCHC's own numbers, I argue one eviction is too many. And I do understand there are cases where evictions happen when someone is arrested, charged, and convicted of a serious crime, and they're in prison, then that unit is left vacant and should be given to another family or to another resident. But in most cases, housing is a prerequisite, even when it comes to addressing those that are facing charges in our court system. Housing is a prerequisite when it comes to basically being a social determinant of health. Without housing, we know people live less, and we know people are going to end up in our encampments and in our shelter system. This is costing the city, it's costing the province, it's costing the federal government a lot of money when there's inaction. So I'm asking this wonderful board to take action now, where city council is going to be on a recess from June until the municipal elections are done. We can take action now to prevent further harm while we examine the data, hopefully have that Black Tenants Advisory Participatory Committee meet, hopefully have the residents that are impacted by evictions be consulted, and so that we can prevent this harm from being an ongoing crisis in our city. So I just want to name that.
Thank you for your suggestions, and we'll take them under consideration. Dan?
I wonder if we get a snapshot number. How many applications are before the board now awaiting a hearing?
So to the chair, I don't have that directly in front of me right now, but happy to talk about the specifics about how we report on evictions and what sort of data and information we can bring forward. It actually isn't something that we've done a lot of reporting on with the board historically. So by all means, we can certainly bring forward more information on that. But there would be likely hundreds that we're dealing with at any given moment.
Somebody. It's okay. Data around evictions, I think that's critically important.
So through the chair, we've actually struck a committee that is supported by the Center for Advancing the Interests of Black People, operations, and our corporate teams, including communications and our data team, to actually look at establishing a process to do just that. We anticipate that could be in place preliminarily the beginning of next year. So we're working with industry experts, external supports to figure out how to best do that. We can't look at one area of the business in isolation of the entirety of the business, and so we're trying to figure out how to best approach that, but to doing so.
Okay, other questions? And Mary, can I ask? Oh, sorry, Brian.
It seems to me that, and I'm not sure whether the deputy has any suggestions, but certainly other than arrears, there are many other challenges facing tenants, and in my view, supportive housing. And it's not just of keeping a person in, but bringing the right supports so that they disturb their neighbors. Many tenants to the mayor's task force concerned about the impact of somebody who had other issues impacting on their family. So it's trying to adjust those balances. So supportive housing to me is an important aspect of trying to solve some of these questions. If you have some suggestions on that area, I certainly would be interested.
That's an excellent observation, my friend, and thank you for naming it. We do need supportive services for tenants who are in crisis, the most vulnerable tenants. I'll give you one good example. I'll name Zulekha and Reem. Zulekha is a senior, Reem is her daughter. They were both evicted from social housing when TCHC filed a motion to evict while Reem was in the hospital in a coma. I want you to take that in. They were evicted while they were in need of medical supports, and the daughter was in a coma. I think TCHC can do a better job by working organizations that provide wraparound support services. In my community, I make reference, it's a great organization on mental health, so that the families are boarded before it reaches a crisis level. So I think we need to have a database, name all the wraparound supports that exist in all the communities, work with our community health centers. I'm a big fan of the Regent Park Community Health Center. They have amazing leadership, an amazing board, and amazing staff. Let's work cohesively as a community to prevent our neighbors from falling within the cracks and being another statistic. Because they're not another statistic, they're a human being. And at the end of the day, we need to take action, and this board has an opportunity to show leadership by putting in place this moratorium while we come up with solutions that will help prevent this crisis from getting worse, and for all of us to pay more for this crisis. It is fiscally prudent for this board to act.
Uba?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Sorry, I lost my voice. And I mean, I always compare TCHC with other service providers and housing providers. And through my clients, I know we are compared to others, we're the best. We try our level best. We use holistic approach. We use other like OACH and Housing Stabilization Fund and what have you, to make sure that we prevent. But one suggestion that I would provide, and I talk about this in our last meeting at Tenant Services, is if we can please look into arrears forgiveness. If somebody owes 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, and we're thinking that person is not able to, after we look every other, way of financial support, let's really look into how, and I know budget is always an issue for us, but let's please look into a forgiveness. We talked about this, I think, for the past 2 years. So I just want to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Uba. Mary?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you look at the Office of OACH's work plan performance appraisal that we've got here and the report that was done, and now that only deals with arrears, but you'll see all of the processes that are in place to assist tenants in terms of their arrears and whatever. It's all listed there. And I'm actually quite impressed by the work that OACH has been doing, ensure that every opportunity is being made available to those who have arrears and are dealing with, and again, it's in the report, dealing with the larger amounts of arrears and the smaller ones, and utilizing the partnerships that they've also developed. For example, the rent bank. And
I love that rent bank.
Yes, we all do. and I saw that, in fact, City Council had increased, I think, the amount that was available for the rent bank. And some other partnerships, Wood Green, and I think there's some good news about what's happening with some of the other requirements. And then, of course, that's just arrears. Then there's the other evictions that are brought for bad behavior or whatever. And again, from what I've seen, I think that the staff makes every effort to work with them. But I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, and I think it's something we're going to face more, is, just as been mentioned, is the need for supportive housing, and that a number of individuals are coming into our buildings who require supportive housing. Unfortunately, it's also a cash issue. There's only so much money available. And I think I've made this point before. I think years ago, TCHC, as it was then called, as it wasn't then called, but had different names, was really a housing. Now, with what's happening in our city and everywhere, we're looking at providing more than just housing. And the difficulty is that requires tremendous resources, tremendous amounts of money, which just aren't there. And there are some times where, as much as we can possibly do, it's just not enough sometimes in terms of providing those supports and ensuring that those individuals coming in can have a good experience with tenancy and understand their obligations, not particularly to their neighbors as well, who are also tenants. So it's complex, but it also comes down to that we're as a corporation to do a lot of things now that I think we just don't have the resources to, and it's something that's going to keep confronting as we move. So with that in mind as well, but that in terms of the money that's given by the city, where that recognition is also going to have to be there, because it's going to get worse. It's not getting better. Yeah. And that's not really our fault. Yeah. And I as well, I've been impressed with what I've seen in terms of what the staff does to try and assist tenants to make sure that there aren't a large number of evictions. And I believe, Sean, it's around, because we've had discussion, it's around 1% or less. I mean, it's unfortunate, but there are some evictions. And I say this, as someone who has been concerned about tenant issues for decades, but I say this, that, sometimes there have to be some evictions, and there's nothing we can, it just has to happen despite everyone's best efforts. Yes.
Just want to correct the record. TCHC tenants, mostly who are on Ontario Works and on Ontario Disability Support Program, don't qualify for the rent bank. I just wanted to make that clear. They don't. And it costs $0 to implement this moratorium. I'm not asking for people to spend money here. I'm asking them to do the right thing. And I would love to get the data from Director Farah, because there were comparisons made with others who are evicting more than TCHC. I would like to see those numbers. That'd be great for accountability's sake, because it's not true. This is a 10-year hike. That's what the data reveals.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time today, and thank you very much for coming. If there are any other comments. Oh, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you certainly can.
Through the chair, I'd like to make a couple of comments about evictions in general, just to be clear with board members about our practice and why we do what we do. So just first off, there are absolutely rent abatement available to ODSP and OW clients, regardless of what was just stated. I will say, so there was a comment made about frequency, and I do believe it is still a significantly rare event at TCHC for someone to face eviction. We model our data at about 1%, as was stated, and if you look at, there are significant academic studies available that show how we compare to the rest of the sector in Ontario. The private market sector sits over 7% in general. And even amongst the nonprofit sector, TCHC sits of the rate of, we're not proud to have to evict people. It's still a terrible thing when it occurs. And I want to be really clear with all of our board members and to the public that we don't seek out the opportunity to evict households. It's a terrible thing when it happens, and we certainly understand, and staff understand well, the impacts that has on individual households. I'll remind you, at the intake process, we're often intaking people that have experienced homelessness, right? So we're sort of operating at both ends of the system at the moment. I will say, though, that it is unfortunately necessary in certain very specific circumstances. We've talked a lot about arrears here, but the reality is arrears is actually the lower proportion that we face. There are evictions for arrears, but I will go back to a comment I made earlier. In 2025, we processed 62 evictions for arrears. I just looked up the number again, 62 evictions for arrears. We entered into over 2,000 repayment agreements with tenants, right? So there are numerous, I think one of the other deputants earlier mentioned, it's true, there are thousands of tenants, unfortunately, that find themselves in arrears situations, but there are extraordinary efforts made to try to address that. And I commend the work of OACH that works alongside our teams as well to ensure that there are good paths for people to follow and good agreements that can be put in place. The majority of evictions that we pursue, though, are not actually about arrears, they're about behaviors. And so these sorts of cases don't get talked about a lot. However, when we're facing a situation where an assault has occurred, or there's physical violence happening between tenants, or perhaps between tenants and staff, or there's harassment and intimidation happening on a floor in a building, for example. We have circumstances where there's major property damage. I have cases I've looked at that have hundreds of thousands of dollars of property damage that's been caused. That has a quality of life impact for other tenants in the building for often months at a time. And there are also issues of fraud sometimes. It's exceedingly rare. I don't want to put out into the public that we believe social services fraud is a major concern. It is not. It's been studied ad nauseum, and it's a very low percentage. However, when it does happen, we have to take action against that particular tenant. And finally, I'll just mention that we work very hard to exceed the rental tenancies agreement requirements with respect to how we treat tenants and what supports we provide when these processes happen. We follow a board-approved eviction policy. One of the previous deputants talked about how that came about. We communicate with tenants through multiple languages and through multiple channels at all times. We make multiple referrals to legal aid services. We make multiple referrals to community agencies. We have multiple organizations within TCHC as well as OACH available for tenants that have arrears challenges. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the case needs to be made in front of the Landlord-Tenant Board, which I will say holds community housers to a higher standard than other housing providers across the province. So all of those things are additional assurances that are in place to ensure that we are not pursuing evictions that we should not be, and that those controls are in place. Always happy to talk more. This is a very significant undertaking of any social housing provider, and always happy to talk more about our policies, our statistics, our practices, and how we're ensuring that we're abiding by those. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Debbie?
A question, and I thought this is where Brian was going to go. Waleed, when you ask for a moratorium, what are we to do with the tenants who are facing eviction due to issues of criminality? What do we say to their neighbors if we were?
Excellent question. I think it's interesting that TCHC has a different standard for their own tenants compared to market tenants. So if you are charged with a crime in a market building, you get to defend yourself in a court of law. Your landlord doesn't say you are evicted because you're being charged for a crime. Okay, so let me make that clear. That doesn't happen in a market building. In TCHC, when we're talking about this non-arrear evictions, I'm a community organizer. I've dealt with youth in our community who got charged with a serious crime. 4 years after that original charge, everything was dropped. They had a clear, no criminal record, but they were kicked out of social housing. They were displaced from their community, and the impact, the human toll is devastating. And there are many cases. It's not just one case. So when you pose this question, what should we do if we do have a moratorium and people are asking the tough questions? Let our courts do their job. If a person is charged, arrested, convicted, and put in jail, they're not going to be living in that unit. And that could be an eviction that is induced by the courts because this person is no longer living in social housing. They're in jail. But in every other case, I think we need to examine what were the root causes that led to this eviction, if it's non-arrears related. What are the pathways to ensure that those tenants are supported? Most of them are Black, and it's Black History Month. 42% of tenants are Black. What are we doing to address the systemic reasons as to why someone could be charged? I'm dealing with a TCHC tenant right now who is a senior, who was accused of something. And because TCHC found out that he was arrested, not convicted, arrested for defending himself from someone who attacked him, that they now are thinking of evicting that person. That is inhumane, that is wrong. So why are we having policies that are not up to date, that not appreciate that we have systemic anti-Black racism? We've named it. We've had Toronto Police Services apologize to the entire city of Toronto saying there is anti-Black racism. And now the Ontario Human Rights Commission is looking into the impact of overcharging on Black, Indigenous, and other racialized members of our community.
Thank you.
So I think we can take the right steps now through a moratorium.
Thank you. Thank you for your deputation.
Thank you very much for your time today. I'm presuming this was approved at Tenant Services, so your committee is recommending the OACH?
The actual work plan performance appraisal was it?
Yes. Excuse me, is being recommended by Tenant
It
Services.
was recommended and approved at that level and sent on to the board.
Can I have a motion to approve the OACH 2025 work? Benita, Mary, seconder, thank you. All in favor? Perfect. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Should I? Can I? Sorry, Benita just raised it with me. And yes, I just think that we should also say that I think it's an excellent report, and she's the office has done, I think, really well and made strides in terms of meeting their goals and surpassing their goals. And there was one that has yet to be dealt with, but that really isn't their fault. It was other partnership organizations that have to come to the table, and that's going to happen. So I just think we should acknowledge that. Okay. Yeah.
Now, thank you for a job well done. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. Congrats.
Yeah.
We vote. First, second, we're good?
I did.
AB?
All in favor? Yeah, we did that. So now we're going to move on to item 8B, which is the garden policy. And Vanita, you pulled that.
How can I possibly follow up on how riveting a discussion it's already been so far? But I will make it brief. I do want to commend the operations team for bringing forward, I hesitate to refer to it as a detailed, but a comprehensive outlook on how the tenant community policy can be executed. One item in the report kind of jumped off the page to me, and it's pertaining to the signage versus the, and maybe how this program is going to be executed. So I would start with considering, like, if within both the policy, procedure, execution, TCHC intends to provide, for example, gardening tools, soil, seeds, that sort of resources, and then do your first line of defense around the safety side of that, because the signage that's in the report proposes basically liability mitigation that may not be possible depending on how you execute the program. So the signage that gets introduced at the properties where this gardening activity is happening need to align with your controls for execution. And then Dean, my friend, for Alana back in Risk and Insurance, please, if you can confirm the liability insurer is aware when we're doing community programming, whether that's a camp or a gardening activity, that we're declaring appropriately so that in the event of a property casualty claim, we can affect the coverage under our insurance program. And then the last point was just a suggestion. If it's truly a gardening club, you may want to do like a volunteer waiver so that it mitigates the risk at the source, and then you don't have to worry about, you know, Uncle Jimmy giving little Susie Joe a gardening rake and she gets hurt, and now we've supplied said gardening rake and have a problem. So wasn't trying to be facetious, but these things can happen, and there's still fun in risk management.
So through the chair, happy to take those comments under advice, follow up with the team.
Are there any other questions as it relates to the garden policy? Could I just ask, it closes at 7 p.m.?
So through the chair, we did get feedback from tenants around noise, antisocial behavior, us not having lights in the garden. So we tried to put some parameters around there. Initially, it was dawn till dusk, and there was a lack of clarity on what that meant and to whom. And so we've tried to establish a parameter that mitigates the risk for tenants who had concerns, but also provided the maximum access, that is something we may have to review as we implement. So I've already discussed with the chair of the Tenant Services Committee as to whether we could provide an update report to the Tenant Services in terms of how this garden season went, and if we need to change that, we're happy to bring it back to the board.
Okay. Okay, because I was just thinking, I'm out golfing at 9 o'clock at night in July, and so I was thinking people could be gardening. Yeah, okay, okay, it just, 7 seemed early in the, are there any other, oh, sorry, Mary?
No, I was just going to make a comment. One that certainly will hope that we can have a report back in the fall after the gardening season is over. This is, this is new, and I think that, there's a lot of stuff in there about enforcement and whatever. I hope we can also look at it as a really good thing and an opportunity for tenants and community to come together.
Yeah.
And if we could, let's look at it that way.
Very
and
healthy
address it that way.
activity.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Let's lead with that.
Yeah, as Debbie has just said, let's lead with that. But I think that let's give it a chance, and I'm sure it'll have to be lots of glitches to be worked out, but we'll see what happens, and it'll be a baseline, and we can move forward. At the same time, I also want to say thank you for all the, you've seen all the documentation, you've seen the agreements, for all the work that was put into this by staff. It was took a lot of time, I know, and there were a lot of issues to deal with and to think about. So I just want to say, yeah, good work, and it's going to need some amendments and changes, but everything, that's
Yes.
a good thing.
Yes,
Okay.
and it is a good, healthy activity and community building, so thank you very much. Can I have a motion to approve the tenant community garden policy? Mary? Thank you. Vanita, seconder. All in favor? Thank you. So we will move on to item 8C, and that's Vanita.
I think Nick also has something to add to that, maybe, but I'll kick off. I just had a question on this with our change in the public developer model, just with this is going to work, given that we don't have that layer in between for the economic benefits that were created associated with our new construction activity.
I'm going to pass that to Will Mendez to talk about from our development team.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Through the chair, through the public developer model, TCHC would be using public procurement practices to leverage opportunities for tenants. We have been doing this in practice for where we've had to procure products or services related to our own redevelopments, and we've been quite successful in that regard. So how it will happen is we will build it into the tenders that are released through our public procurement practices. There is the ability for TCHC to perhaps negotiate terms and final agreements with subtrades or construction managers, as opposed to a developer, which then does that on our behalf. We'd be doing that directly.
Thanks, Will. So to confirm my understanding, with the traditional developer layer removed, we would handle that through the procurement of the GC and other sub-trades to address that sort of missing economic piece that we're used to delivering a different way.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Nick?
Thank you. First off, just like to compliment management. Like, two elements I really like about this report is the accountability factor in terms of promises made and then follow it up on and reported on in a quantifiable way. And then second, I appreciate the lessons learned and sort of progress updates. I think that's really important. Goes without saying, but large organization, lots of activities and initiatives. We've got to keep on learning and improving as we go. So thank you for highlighting that. And then my one question, attachment 5, page 158 of the board report, developer commitments and progress, far right column, percentage delivered. I'm curious, the dialogue and relationship with the developer, is this something that they agree with or acknowledge or work in progress, or is this strictly internal TCHC assessment and TBD? And I'm just to put a point on it, like Don Somerville, like that project's effectively complete. now, and as I read, like 44%, 80%, 40% on completion. I'm curious sort of how that's going to play out from an accountability perspective. Thank you.
Sorry, who's addressing that question?
I will be, sorry, through the chair. The percentages that have been, in terms of the percentages being delivered in relation to Don Somerville specifically, there is a typo. I do apologize for that. In there, on the far right column where it says 44% in relation to employment wages, the developer has met that target and has actually exceeded that target. In relation to the 80%, that is an internal target, whereas 100,000 worth of funding that has been provided to TCHC to administer to community. And the percentage that has been $80,000, there's a 20% to be the tenants. And the developers provided $250,000 as a commitment towards economic development activities. And of that, we've utilized 100,000 of the 250,000, which is the 40%. So
thank you. Yeah, that's helpful. And not to sort of like belabor sort of more details and more numbers, but it is useful from my perspective, what's internally sort of managed versus externally. What I mean by that is like funds the developer have given us and we just haven't, provided those scholarships yet because of applicants or what have you. That's in one category in my mind where that's in TCHC's control and sort of, it's just a matter of timing maybe, as opposed to the things the developer has not provided per the agreement that, requires, follow up and external pressure, what have you. So, but appreciate that. Thank you. Overall, I really like this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes, I'm just wondering, on an ongoing basis, and that may be too difficult to track, but the impact of all of this great initiatives for ongoing tracking increase in tenant financial capacity. In other words, some of these things are short terms, some are long, especially if they can get into a trade and have eventually, a full-time employment beyond that. So I'm just trying to figure out how we can, or if it's possible to track the ongoing impact of these initiatives rather than the immediate or short-term ones from an operations perspective. I mean, are we seeing increases in tenant incomes, household incomes as a result of this on an ongoing basis rather than just during whatever the development has occurred? And so is there a way to see what the long-term impact is?
I think Nadia is going to speak to that.
So through the chair, I'm happy to work with the development team and try to identify at a unit level which tenants have benefited from some of these opportunities. I will work with legal to determine what we should be tracking and reporting to the board as it relates to individual tenancies and the reported income. So happy to do it if we can, but I'd like to follow up with the team to make sure we do everything above board.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious because there's hopefully they go on to future income for families and tenants, and it would be nice to know that it has more than an immediate impact. Thank you.
I had a similar question, Brian, at TSC. So if you can also track the length of the employment and then post-employment, I think we heard from staff that they provide ongoing job placements once those positions end. But it would be good if we can track, Brian is suggesting, over a much longer period of time, more than a year or so.
So can I address that?
Yes,
So
Sean?
just to the chair, I'll just add, so the development team under doing long-term back and implicate sort of 3 to 5 years and try to understand that longer-term impact. I absolutely take Nadia's point, though, that we just have to make sure that we're doing that in a general sense as opposed to sort of tracking individuals. And we'll certainly do that. And then in addition, we're also working on a broader sort of umbrella report back on community economic development in a more general sense, right? This is very development focused. What benefits do we get when we pursue particular investments in a particular community for Revite? However, there are all manner of different things that we invest in that contribute to economic development in different neighborhoods. Our summer youth employment program, for example, is a great example of that. So there are different levers we have: scholarships, employment, grants, various things that I don't think have ever been kind of crystallized and pulled together under one umbrella. So we want to bring that back for a board discussion and talk about what the broader economic implications are of that, all of that work.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Dan, and then Nick. Yes.
I was looking at the minutes from a previous board meeting. There's a point in here from Vidal and or Nadia that I didn't quite understand, and I wonder if it applies to this discussion. It's on page 13 of the materials we've got.
Of the public minutes?
Yeah. Yep. And it says, Mr. Chavez, my good friend Vidal, also noted there may be business processes in place that cause harm and disparate outcomes and therefore need to be identified and amended. What could somebody elaborate on that? And
So through the chair, that particular item referred to the discussion that happened at the border around the community safety well-being strategy. So those were comments around historical activities, and the focus of the report and the work was around the go-forward plan for community safety and well-being.
but it reads like there's something going on that we shouldn't be letting go on.
So I think that the language was used in response to the CSU review, and if you read that report certainly indicates that there were harmful behaviors happening in the organization. So I think it's an acknowledgement of what was reported in the CSU review and a commitment to how we do things differently going forward.
This doesn't refer to the organization specifically. Anyway, I'll deeper into that myself. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments on the economic opportunities? I think I say, oh, Parthy? Sorry. Oh, and Nick. I'm sorry.
Just a minor point on with that, Ron. Just in terms of, I'm curious how many people are involved in that sort of like monitoring and following up information. I think there is a trade-off between tracking long-term outcomes and follow-ups and so on versus every dollar going to providing current service. And like fundamentally, we believe generating these job opportunities is a good thing. And so whether it's very good or exceptionally good, I'm less fussed about the nuance, but just make that part of the discussion, I think, as the reporting at that time. Thank you. To the chair, happy. There'll be an administrative overhead associated with the intake process, the allocation, the seeking out the funding, the tracking, all of those different items. So we can try to describe that. Thank you.
Parthy?
Thank you. When these structures are being created, are there baselines from which we operate in terms of dollar figure of wage targets or percentage of jobs or money towards scholarships or in-kind contributions? What are we working from when these are, I'm assuming they're negotiated?
So to the chair, I'll say they are negotiated, and we have gotten better at them over time. So if you look back in time to our initial set of agreements, they aren't as rewarding as some recent ones are, right? Our current one that we're working through with phase 4 and 5 of Regent Park is one of the largest ones in Canadian history.
We do have general targets that we've used, and I'll ask Will to correct me if I get it wrong, but generally we've tried to go for 10% of employment as a general figure. I don't know if we have additional benchmarks we use around scholarships and grants. Do you want to speak to that, Will? We don't always get them, right? It is a negotiating process.
So through the chair, and to help establish what those targets should be, we actually go community by community and develop tenant priorities, because we know that employment is very important for tenants across the organization. However, there might be some unique priorities or barriers or service gaps that need to be addressed that are unique to a particular community, and we would try to negotiate solutions to those issues or priorities with the developer or contractors or internally, and try to get that funded or supported through the efforts through our procurement process, either through a selection or working direct consultants and the trades in a development project. In terms of a baseline, we do trend at approximately 1.5%, which is the 1.5% of a contract value, which is of a 10% target, meaning 10% of, on average, labor that is associated with the project going to tenants. We do provide flexibility to contractors, developers, to either provide us the job opportunities or cash in lieu of not being able to facilitate employment opportunities. So sometimes you may get a contractor or developer who has not been able to meet the target that provides cash in lieu, or simply provides a cash contribution upfront, or in combination of employment and cash contributions.
Mm-hmm. Do you think is there value in as we potentially see more of these revitalizations models going in the foreseeable future, that internally, and perhaps this is for an in-camera discussion, to have a codified baseline expectations for each of these categories, so it informs these future deals?
Yeah, so through the chair, I'd be happy to have a more detailed conversation with the board about that. I think it could be helpful, particularly as we pivot to this new approach where we're no longer doing large-scale developer-led deals, right, that are neighborhood-wide, and perhaps we're doing block-by-block deals, with a smaller contractor, for example. So because of that, we're essentially spending more of our own money, right, which will be city money or federal government money, we suspect. So there's a trade-off, right? How much of that investment do we want to see put towards these kinds of returns versus how much do we want to see put towards additional expansion of housing? And it would probably be worthwhile having a conversation about those trade-offs.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, is there any documented follow-up in terms of the employment that goes out? So person A is tenant A is hired for project X to the life cycle, or I don't know if life cycle is the word, but the course of, do they continue in that employment? For us to understand, are these temporary jobs, or is this leading to a career?
Yeah, so through the chair, similar to some of the questions asked earlier about sort of the long-term tracking. Mm-hmm. So we don't have a lot of that in place today, but we do know who was hired under our initial agreements, and we do have a plan in place to revisit those every few years, mm-hmm, to judge the longevity of it. I can speak anecdotally in that we certainly understand that a number of these do turn into long-term careers. My very first visit to Somerville, I met somebody who had been hired years before as a TCHC tenant and was continuing to work on that site. So anecdotally we see it, but we need to start to build up the stats to back that up, and that's what Will was speaking to on the long-term tracking that we're going to start doing.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions as it relates to the Economic Opportunities Report? My only comment is every year I say this when we get to the annual report, I always think these numbers are too small, especially when it comes to scholarship money. And I always think about the hundreds of millions of dollars of contracts that we award, multi-year contracts to other vendors for preventative maintenance or whatever. And I would love that they also be encouraged, that this isn't just something that relates to development. And I would, that's my dream, because I think the need is great. And the numbers in comparison to the need, when you see like 200,000 of scholarships, you know, it's very small. So I know that that takes resources to, you know, engage with those vendors and work on that. But anyway, that would be my goal, and that it's not just development partners, that it's, you know, the people that are doing the plumbing, preventative maintenance or whatever. And those are skills there that can be beneficial to our tenants. Yes?
Very quickly, sorry.
Yeah.
Completely agree with you. We'd love these numbers to be
Well, I say it
dramatically
every
higher.
year.
Absolutely. But I also want board members and public to understand too that there's been significant work in this space. So that's why I want to bring back that umbrella
And I'd
report
love to hear
talks
that, because
about
we
it.
only hear about it as it relates to development.
We increased our youth summer hiring by about 50% last year.
I saw
right?
the painters
As
last
an
August.
example, right? We increased our social procurement spending by multiple millions of dollars this year, which went towards not just specific developments, but, you know, move out vendors and cleaning vendors and landscaping vendors and all things that are better sort of pathways to employment for lots of tenants. So I'm excited to be able to bring back what we've done already, and our plans going forward are even more aggressive to continue to increase the level of spending in that space.
Okay, then we'd love to hear about that. So if there are no one to can I have a motion to adjourn the public session? Vanita, Nick, seconder, all in favor? Thank you. I will give everyone a chance to get a little something to eat. Can we come back in 10 minutes? So you can eat at your desks. So thank you very much.
You're doing without me first, right?
I'm doing without you first.
I got through that.
Yeah, we did. I got a whole bunch.